talked about a couple of things I want to pivot on. Actually, I was going to ask you about, and let's go in two different directions. One, you talked a lot about over the summer. You seem to be busier than whatever. Maybe you talked about shrinkflation, and so
Yes.
for the people, let's talk. I explained it to my family, and everybody kind of goes, "Huh, you're right." So you had examples. So A, let's talk about shrinkflation, and then B, let's talk about the prices. You called it of the trifecta. You called it the creatively made me think of Diane Brisebois' term for you, Hollywood Sylvain, the Spook Point, which got you on every TV. But let's start with shrinkflation. Explain what that is to the people and what
Yeah.
your thoughts are. What's happening?
Yeah, so shrinkflation is not new, really. It's been around for decades, really. But we always seem to see more shrinkflation cases when commodity prices go up because input costs in processing do go up eventually. And so manufacturers, they tend to protect their price points and will reduce quantity. So as a consumer, uh, the outcome of shrinkflation is basically to walk into a grocery store and see the illusion that you're buying the same quantity at the same price, but you're not, because they've played around with formats, with packaging, and of course the strategy will vary from one product line, from one SKU to another. Sometimes they will play around with packaging. For example, with juices, they'll actually just change the bottle. They'll create some sort of space in at the bottom of the bottle, so you don't have to put as much juice in the bottle, for example. Sometimes they actually they will shrink bite sizes, but they won't reduce the quantity right away. So over 1 year, and the whippets are an example right now. Instead of 15 whippets, you get 18, same quantity. But I bet you, Michael, in 6 months to a year from now, they'll go back to 15 with smaller bite-sized whippets, reducing quantity. So shrinkflation is, it's not just a matter of changing a format or packaging in an instant. It really carries on for several years. And so to monitor that is very difficult to do. And that's why most consumers just aren't noticing really all that much until
Yeah,
you talk to them about it. And then they have that ha moment. They say, oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. It's
Oh,
like
you're right.
Buttergate, Buttergate, all of
Yeah,
a sudden people realize, oh,
right,
yeah, my butter is harder.
right. It's the epitome of the frog in the boiling water, right? The frog will just sit there for a while, not noticing small incremental little changes. And again, to be clear for the people, shrinkflation is about paying the same for a product, but you're getting less. I mean, that's
That's
basically
right.
what you're talking about in some
And
way,
it's
shape,
not
or form.
exactly, and it's not illegal. And frankly, I don't know about you, Michael, but I don't really have a problem with it because all the
Mm,
information is disclosed. It's all there. And even when
yeah,
you walk into a grocery store, you do have your price per 100 milliliters, 100 grams. It's all there.
yeah,
It's always there
yeah,
for you to assess. So there are no
yeah.
surprises. It's just people tend to take it the wrong way. I've always argued that shrinkflation could actually help our food waste problem, because one of the problems that we face when it comes to food
Hmm.
waste, and if you remember Lori Nichols, when she actually came on our podcast, I think it was
Yep.
last year, she did mention that we do buy too much food
Yeah.
based on our life, our quality of life, our pace. And
Yeah.
so shrinkflation may actually end up allowing consumers to waste less food, even though it is contributing to inflation. My only concern with shrinkflation really is with StatsCan. I'm not convinced, even though they're telling Canadians that they are monitoring the effects of shrinkflation. I don't think they do very
You've got a new
properly.
partner. You posted you got a new partner where you've suspected this for a while, but talk about this new partnership that you've got that's kind of trying to figure out this price thing around what
Yeah, I mean this
StatsCan does.
this great firm out of Saskatchewan. It's called Better Cart, and they actually monitor prices and sizes. And so over
Oh,
the summer, we actually went through the entire food basket monitored by StatsCan, only to realize that 70% of quantities on their list you can't even find on the market anymore. They're just obsolete.
interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know how they're
Interesting.
converting prices. Like this morning, for example, StatsCan came out with August data on inflation, and so inflation is up. There seems to be a lag with StatsCan, so we're expecting numbers to creep up in the fall to match kind of the forecast we basically published almost a year ago.
Well, just on that note, I know a lot of senior people at Stats Canada. We talked to them about retail statistics. You just gave me a great idea for a guest, and Stats Canada has joined me to talk about their numbers. And okay, that's a good
Oh,
guest idea. We
maybe
should get.
actually that's a good idea. I've never thought about inviting StatsCan on our
Yeah,
podcast, but they are very. I don't know about your experience, but they're very difficult to deal with. As soon as you're challenging some of the methodology, because I think the methodology is pretty clear. It's where it gets fuzzy. It's how they capture the data,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they say that they actually rely on grocers because they do capture data in stores, but
yeah.
they're never clear on brands, banners, and you know this, Michael. I mean, prices will vary from one brand to another, from one banner
Banner
to
to banner.
another.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
my experience with them, to answer your query, has been, they're actually more willing to talk about their processes than one might imagine, right? They will join you and explain what they do. Sometimes they're bound by confidentiality, and they're very freaked about giving you any information that might reveal how the data, specifics about the data. I haven't found them wildly flexible in terms of will change your ideas, but sometimes they are. We've been dealing with it on the retail side because I'll give you an example. When StatsCan reports e-commerce data, you know what they don't report in the e-commerce data? Amazon. Amazon is not in
interesting,
Stats Canada e-commerce data. You know why? Because they consider it a warehouse, an importer. Right. So
interesting.
and because they're not domiciled here. So they say
Right.
everything is imported. Wayfair, same thing. So if you think about e-commerce data, wow, that's 15, $20 billion missing from
At least.
e-commerce,
At
at
least.
least, right?
Yeah.
At least. And there's other things, but hey, we're always thankful for Stats Canada for actually doing that data. We had no data on e-commerce. Now at least we have data that's
So they're
very good.
tracking e-commerce data without Amazon and Wayfair. That's great. That's very accurate.
Yeah. So the good news is we believe it's directionally quite solid. Like the numbers are solid. We just say, but you got the number. The number isn't the number. So we at Retail Council of Canada, when I do my work there, we take the number and basically double it because right. But the percentage growth, we say that when I talk to retailers about the percentage growth, which was 70%, they reported 70%, 70 from 2020 to between 2020 and 2019. eMarketer, other analysts say between 70 and 75, including Amazon. So they're not far off that way, but the absolute numbers are not
Oh yeah.
guided. Anyway,
What what if
we're
what
off on a
if
bit.
But with inflation, I mean, I kind of it's for us at the lab. StatsCan is really just an indicator. We're using other sources like Nielsen IQ, Better Card to kind of really understand what actually is
Right.
going on out there. Like butter is another good example, Michael. Butter, according to StatsCan right now, butter is up 2.8% since January. But according to
Hmm.
Better Card, it's up 35.5%. 35.
35%.
Yes. And I believe
Wow.
it because I mean, you remember with Buttergate, uh, the fact they were using palmite to reduce costs, and of course with supply management. And I've always argued it's very easy to fix the problem. Do the right thing, you'll be compensated. It's a no
Yeah.
brainer for farmers, and that's exactly what's happening right now. So
Well,
I
you've
was
introduced.
expecting better. I was expecting butter prices to go up in Canada as a result of Buttergate, and they have.
Well, you've introduced a new thing in my household. As I've often said, my wife and I, who've been married quite a while, we agree on most things. We disagree on how much champagne to drink, how much turkey to eat, and now we disagree on the butter to buy. Because I always buy, thanks to Buttergate, I always buy the more expensive, either organic or grass fed. And my lovely wife comes home with the cheapest butter she could find. I'm like, But
No,
Buttergate, but Buttergate.
you should say,
Um,
great, I needed a hammer.
yeah, and I'm trying to cut through it. Of course, I'm very dramatic about it.
Of course.
Trying to cut through it with a chainsaw.